Part 1. My name is Michael, and I had the kind of love that made people believe in fairy tales. Amy and I met in college, two young souls navigating the chaos of academia, instantly drawn to each other. She was my best friend before she became my lover, my partner in crime before she became my wife. It was the perfect foundation for a love that felt indestructible. Amy had a laugh that could light up a room and a smile that made the worst of days bearable. She was everything I ever wanted in a woman: smart, funny, kind, and fiercely independent. We did everything together. Late-night drives with no destination, cooking ridiculous meals and burning half of them. Lazy Sunday mornings tangled in the sheets with no intention of getting out. From the moment we started dating, I knew I wanted to spend my life with her. Every anniversary, every birthday, every milestone, I went out of my way to show her just how much she meant to me. I left love notes in places she wouldn't expect, surprised her with weekend getaways, and held her close every night like she was the most precious thing in my world, because she was. We got married 5 years into our relationship, and it was the happiest day of my life. The vows we exchanged weren't just words. They were promises I intended to keep. Forever and always, we whispered to each other before sealing it with a kiss. Our life together was bliss. We had our own little routines, inside jokes that no one else understood, and an unspoken language that only we could decipher. We built a home together, not just a house, but a place filled with laughter, love, and the warmth of shared dreams. She worked in marketing, and I ran a successful tech startup. Our careers kept us busy, but we always made time for each other. Date nights were sacred, and even after years of being together, we still acted like lovesick teenagers. Our friends envied our relationship, and honestly, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We had been talking about starting a family soon. It was the natural next step, and the thought of little feet running around our house filled me with a kind of joy I couldn't put into words. Amy had been just as excited. We had names picked out, and she had already started looking at baby clothes even though we weren't pregnant yet. It was our dream, one we were building together. So when our anniversary was approaching, I wanted to do something special, something that would show her how much I loved her. I had been saving for months, secretly planning the perfect surprise. A house. Our dream house. I wanted to give her the home we had always talked about, the place where we would raise our children, celebrate decades of anniversaries, and grow old together. I had found the perfect one. A beautiful 2-story house with a big backyard and a porch where we could drink coffee in the mornings. I signed the papers a week before our anniversary, planning to reveal it to her on our special day. I could already imagine the tears of joy in her eyes, the way she would throw her arms around me and tell me I was crazy but that she loved me for it. The night before our anniversary, I sat in our bedroom, staring at the documents, grinning like an idiot. I envisioned us dancing in our new living room, hosting family barbecues, and tucking our future children into bed. Everything was perfect. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was too excited. I lay awake, listening to Amy's soft breathing beside me, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. I traced the curve of her cheek with my fingers, whispering how much I loved her, even though she was already deep in sleep. I was overwhelmed with happiness, convinced that life couldn't possibly get any better than this. I thought about all the little things that made our love special. The way she always stole my hoodies even though she had plenty of her own. The way she would dance in the kitchen when she thought no one was watching. The way she scrunched her nose when she was concentrating. Every single moment with her felt like magic, and I couldn't wait to surprise her with the house. I spent the next morning making final arrangements. I called the realtor to ensure everything was set for the reveal. I even booked us a romantic dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date, planning to tell her the big news over candlelight. I left work early that day, picked up her favorite flowers, and drove home, ready to start the rest of our lives in our new home. Everything was perfect. Or so I thought. What I didn't know was that my perfect life, my perfect marriage, was about to shatter in a way I never saw coming. Part 2. Planning the wedding with Amy was one of the best times of my life. It was stressful, sure. There were guest lists, venue selections, catering tastings, and seating charts that made my head spin. But through all of it, we were a team. We laughed at the absurdity of it all, made bets on which of our relatives would complain first, and stole kisses in between appointments with florists and photographers. Amy wanted a fall wedding, something about the crisp air and golden leaves making everything feel more romantic. I didn't care about the season. I just wanted to marry her. She picked out a stunning venue, a vineyard just outside of town with rolling hills and the perfect view of the sunset. I could already picture her standing at the altar, bathed in the warm glow of twilight, the most beautiful sight I would ever see. I took on as much of the planning as I could. She handled the decorations, flowers, and dresses, while I focused on logistics, the venue, catering, music, and, most importantly, the honeymoon. I wanted it to be unforgettable. We decided on a trip to Greece, a place she had always dreamed of visiting. I booked us the best suite I could afford, right on the water, where we could wake up to the sound of the waves every morning. Amid all the wedding chaos, I had been working on something else, something bigger. Amy had no idea, but I had been saving for a house, our dream home. I wanted to surprise her with it as a wedding gift. She had mentioned in passing how amazing it would be to start our married life in a place that was truly ours, where we could grow together, make memories, and maybe even start a family. So, I made it my mission to find that place for us. I spent months searching, visiting houses, and talking to realtors in secret. Every free moment I had outside of work and wedding planning was spent hunting for the perfect home. It had to be right, something warm, inviting, with a big kitchen because Amy loved to cook. A backyard where we could have barbecues, where our future kids could run around. A cozy fireplace for the winter nights when she liked to curl up with a book and a glass of wine. And then, I found it. A beautiful two-story home on a quiet street, just a short drive from the city. It had everything, spacious rooms, a big backyard, a porch where we could sit and watch the sunset together. The moment I stepped inside, I knew. This was it. This was our home. I handled everything in secret. I met with the realtor alone, signed the paperwork, and secured the financing without Amy suspecting a thing. It wasn't easy keeping something this big from her, but I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted to see the look on her face when I handed her the keys, to see the happiness in her eyes when she realized what I had done. As the wedding day approached, I made arrangements for the big reveal. My plan was simple. On our wedding night, after the reception, I would take her to the house instead of a hotel. I had already furnished the bedroom and stocked the kitchen with all her favorite snacks and wine. I imagined carrying her over the threshold, watching as she took it all in, tears of joy streaming down her face. The thought of it kept me going through the sleepless nights of wedding preparations. The stress, the exhaustion, it was all worth it because soon, we would be starting the next chapter of our lives in the home of our dreams. As the weeks passed, everything seemed to fall into place. Invitations were sent out, dress fittings were completed, and my bachelor party, courtesy of my best man, Jake, came and went in a blur of drinks and laughter. Amy had her bridal shower with her closest friends, and every night, we talked excitedly about the future. One evening, as we sat on our apartment's tiny balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, Amy sighed contentedly and rested her head on my shoulder. "I can't believe we're almost there," she whispered. "It feels like we've waited forever for this." I kissed the top of her head, resisting the urge to tell her about the house. Instead, I squeezed her hand and smiled. "It's going to be perfect," I promised. And I believed it with every fiber of my being. The final days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of last-minute details. The cake, the seating chart, the vows we wrote in secret. I had never been so excited, so full of anticipation for anything in my life. Amy was glowing with happiness, and I reveled in the knowledge that I was the reason behind it. Everything was coming together perfectly, or so I thought. Part 3. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. The anticipation, the excitement, it was overwhelming. Tomorrow, Amy would become my wife. Tomorrow, we would start our forever. I had spent the entire day tying up loose ends, making sure everything was perfect. The tux was ready, the rings were safe, and the house was waiting for us. It was supposed to be the happiest night of my life. But something felt off. Amy had been distant that day, her responses shorter than usual, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I chalked it up to nerves. After all, a wedding was a big deal. But deep down, an uneasy feeling settled in my gut. I pushed the thoughts aside, telling myself I was overthinking. I just needed to relax, get some rest, and wake up ready to marry the love of my life. But sleep never came. Sometime after midnight, I decided to go for a drive to clear my head. Maybe a quick ride around the city would help me settle my thoughts. I grabbed my keys, stepped into my car, and instinctively drove toward our apartment. I wasn't even sure why. I knew Amy wasn't there. She was supposed to be at her maid of honor's house, spending the night before our wedding with her bridal party. But as I pulled up to our building, I saw her car in the parking lot. My heart dropped. Maybe she forgot something. Maybe she just needed some time alone. A million justifications ran through my mind as I stepped out of the car, my pulse hammering in my ears. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my hands shaking as I unlocked the door. The apartment was dark, silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I almost turned around, almost convinced myself to leave and not let paranoia ruin what was supposed to be the best day of my life. And then I heard it. A soft, breathy moan coming from the bedroom. My stomach clenched, my blood turning to ice. I stood frozen for a moment, my mind refusing to process what my ears had just heard. But then it came again, clearer, unmistakable. I moved toward the bedroom, each step heavier than the last. My fingers trembled as I reached for the doorknob, twisting it slowly, afraid of what I was about to see. And then the door swung open. Amy was on our bed, tangled in the sheets I had bought for us, her body pressed against another man's. For a moment, time stopped. My vision blurred, my ears rang, and my breath caught in my throat. I wanted to believe it wasn't real, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But it was real. Amy's back arched beneath him, her fingers digging into his shoulders. And the worst part? The expression on her face. Pure ecstasy. She had never looked at me like that. A sound escaped my lips, something between a gasp and a strangled cry. They both turned to look at me, and in that moment, I saw it. The horror in Amy's eyes. The shock. The guilt. Michael, she started, scrambling to pull the sheets over herself, but I didn't let her finish. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Amy's eyes widened in panic. What the hell are you doing? The guy, some asshole I didn't recognize, sat up, looking just as stunned as she was. Dude, what the fuck? I ignored them both. I needed proof. I needed to make sure this wasn't just some nightmare I could wake up from. The screen captured everything, the bed, the tangle of bodies, the betrayal written all over Amy's face. She lunged for me, trying to grab the phone from my hands. Michael, please, don't. I stepped back, my entire body numb. How long? My voice barely sounded like my own. Tears streamed down her face. It's not what it looks like. Bullshit, I snapped. How long? She swallowed hard, looking at the guy beside her as if searching for an answer. He had the decency to look guilty, at least. A few months, she finally whispered. My knees nearly gave out. A few months. While we planned our wedding, while I spent nights dreaming about our future, she had been sneaking around behind my back. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. I want you out. Amy sobbed, shaking her head. Michael, please. Out. I roared, my voice shaking the walls. The guy scrambled out of bed, grabbing his clothes, mumbling something under his breath before bolting out the door. Amy stayed frozen, tears running down her cheeks, wrapped in the sheet like it could somehow protect her from the weight of what she had done. I didn't stay to hear her excuses. I didn't want to hear anything else. I turned around, walked out, and slammed the door behind me. Everything inside me shattered. Tomorrow was supposed to be our wedding day. But instead of standing at the altar, waiting for the woman I loved, I would be watching the life I had built with her go up in flames. Part 4. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. Instead, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, staring blankly at the dashboard as the weight of what had just happened settled over me. The wedding was in mere hours. Guests were already arriving. My family, her family. Everyone was expecting a perfect day. But there was no perfect day anymore. There was only this gaping hole in my chest where my heart used to be. I could have canceled it right then. Could have sent out messages, made a scene, let everyone know exactly what kind of woman Amy was. But as the rage and betrayal burned inside me, an idea took shape. A dark, cold, ruthless idea. She had taken my love and spit on it. Taken the future I had built for us and torn it to shreds. But she didn't get to walk away unscathed. No, she was going to feel every ounce of pain she had inflicted on me. So, I put on my tux. I forced a smile. I walked into that venue as if nothing had happened. Amy had been trying to call me all morning. I ignored every single one. When I finally arrived at the venue, she was waiting for me in her dressing room, looking radiant in her wedding gown, like the perfect bride. It made me sick. Michael, she whispered, stepping toward me. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling. Please, let's talk. I forced myself to smile, to cup her cheek as if I still loved her. There's nothing to talk about, I said softly. Today is our wedding day. Her lip quivered. You're not mad? I just want to marry you, I lied. A sob of relief escaped her lips, and she threw herself into my arms. I held her for a moment, long enough to steady my breathing, long enough to make sure my voice wouldn't shake when I spoke. Let's go make this the happiest day of our lives. The ceremony was beautiful. Everyone commented on how perfect we looked together. The way we smiled at each other, the way I held her hands so gently as we exchanged vows. If only they knew the truth. If only they knew that every time I looked at her, all I saw was her in my bed with another man. Every time she said she loved me, I heard the lies in her voice. But I played my part flawlessly. And so did she. And then, the reception. Everything was elegant, twinkling lights, a beautiful banquet hall, music playing softly in the background. People clinked their glasses, urging us to kiss. I obliged, pressing my lips against hers, tasting the deceit on her lips. And then, it was time for the speeches. Amy's father went first, giving a touching speech about how he had always known I was the perfect man for his daughter. Her maid of honor followed, gushing about our love, about how Amy had dreamed of this day since she was a little girl. And then, it was my turn. I stood up, microphone in hand, and smiled as I looked around the room. Amy beamed at me, still unaware, still believing she had gotten away with it. I cleared my throat and took a deep breath. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, I started, my voice smooth, steady. It means the world to Amy and me to have all our closest friends and family gathered to celebrate our love. I turned to look at her, watching as her smile grew, as she reached for my hand under the table. There's something truly beautiful about love, I continued. It's about trust, commitment, and knowing that the person beside you is your partner in every sense of the word. Amy squeezed my hand. She had no idea what was coming next. But love is also about honesty, I said, my voice growing firmer. And sometimes, honesty reveals things we never expected. Confusion flickered across her face. A murmur ran through the crowd. So, before I continue, I just want to take a moment to show my appreciation for my beautiful bride. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. Because last night, she gave me a wedding gift I'll never forget. I pressed play. The video I had recorded the night before filled the banquet hall, the sound of Amy's moans ringing through the speakers, her body tangled with another man's on the very bed we were supposed to share as husband and wife. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. Amy's mother covered her mouth in horror. Amy shot up from her seat, her face draining of all color. "Michael, please." "Sit down," I snapped, my voice cold, unrecognizable even to myself. "This is your moment, Amy. Enjoy it." She trembled, her hands gripping the table as if it could anchor her to reality. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked around, seeing the faces of her loved ones twisted in shock and disgust. Her father stood up, fury burning in his eyes. "Amy," he hissed. "What the hell is this?" I turned back to the crowd, smiling. "I wanted you all to see the woman I was about to marry. The woman who looked me in the eyes and vowed to love me while sneaking around behind my back for months." Amy collapsed into her chair, sobbing. The guests sat in stunned silence, some whispering, some glaring at her in disgust. I set the microphone down. "Enjoy the rest of the evening, everyone. There won't be a wedding after all." And with that, I walked away, leaving Amy to drown in the ruins of the perfect life she thought she had. Part 5. I walked out of that banquet hall and never looked back. The moment I stepped outside, a cold breeze hit me, but it was nothing compared to the icy rage pulsing through my veins. My heart should have been broken, shattered into a million pieces, but I felt nothing. Just emptiness. Just the deep, burning satisfaction of watching Amy crumble in front of everyone who once adored her. The fallout was immediate. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with messages, calls, some from friends, some from Amy's family, and even some from the guests who had been at the reception. But I didn't answer. I had nothing left to say. I had made my statement loud and clear. Amy, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. The video spread like wildfire. Someone had recorded the entire thing, my speech, the gasps, the stunned silence, and most importantly, the damning evidence of her betrayal. It hit social media before the night was even over. By morning, everyone knew. Her friends, her colleagues, even her employer. She tried calling me, leaving desperate voicemails, sobbing, begging for me to talk to her. "Michael, please, I made a mistake. Please, I love you. I can fix this. Just talk to me." I deleted every message without listening past the first few seconds. Her parents? They were done with her. Her father called me the next morning, his voice laced with fury and shame. "Michael, I don't know what to say. I had no idea my daughter was capable of this." "She was," I said flatly. She just didn't think she'd get caught. He sighed heavily. I don't blame you for what you did. If it were me, I don't think I would have handled it as gracefully. That was the last time I spoke to him. As for the guy, the piece of shit she cheated on me with, turns out he was one of her coworkers, someone from her office she had laughed about over dinner as if he meant nothing. Someone she had assured me was just a friend. His name was Brandon, and his life was about to go down in flames, too. Brandon had made the fatal mistake of attending the wedding as Amy's guest, her +1, standing among our friends, shaking hands with my family, drinking my expensive champagne while knowing full well what he had done. By the next day, his name was everywhere. His boss, who had also been at the wedding, found out and fired him on the spot for conduct that brought disgrace to the company's image. His fiancée, yes, the bastard had been engaged, left him, throwing his stuff onto the street in a fit of rage that, according to one of my mutual friends, had drawn a cheering crowd. Amy had nowhere to turn. Her parents cut her off, her friends refused to speak to her, and her workplace? Well, it turns out cheating on your fiancé, humiliating him in front of hundreds of people, and having the whole ordeal go viral doesn't sit well with corporate ethics. She lost her job within a week. The apartment? It was in my name. She had 24 hours to get out. But the house, our dream house, the one I had bought as a surprise, was the real tragedy. The one thing that made my blood boil with hatred every time I thought about it. The place that should have been ours, filled with laughter and love, instead became a painful reminder of everything I had lost. I couldn't stand to look at it. So I burned it down. Not literally. No, I wasn't going to jail for her. But I sold it at a massive loss, just to get rid of it. The money? I didn't need it. I donated every last cent to a charity for men recovering from broken engagements and divorces, because if I had to suffer, at least someone else would benefit from it. Amy tried to reach me one last time. She showed up at my door a few weeks later, looking nothing like the woman I had once loved. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes sunken with exhaustion. She was desperate. Michael, please, she whispered, her voice shaking. I have nothing left. I looked at her, at the hollow shell of a person she had become, and felt nothing. Not pity, not anger. Just emptiness. That's what you deserve, I said. And I shut the door in her face. She left town not long after. Last I heard, she moved back in with some distant relative in another state, trying to piece her life back together. But it didn't matter. As far as I was concerned, she was just another ghost from my past. As for me, I moved on. It took time, but I did. Therapy helped. Friends helped. I traveled. I rebuilt my life. I found new love, real love, the kind that doesn't hide secrets or betray trust. Amy thought she had destroyed me. But in the end, she only destroyed herself. The end.